Let's start off with Emerson Hancock's debut. And I'm watching his start last night, and I'm thinking things along these lines in my head as I'm watching this. I think Emerson Hancock can be the reason this rotation gets to October healthy.
If he steps in for the role that Brian Wu was filling while Wu's on the IL, absolutely. The Mariners' strength is their starting pitching. How many times have we said that this season? If Hancock just picks up right where Brian Wu left off, why not? If the production doesn't dip and everybody stays healthy, he can do exactly that.
Now, is this an absurd take on this part? It might be, because I just thought of this in this moment. But the role that Emerson will probably fill this season might not be too different than a role that a peak Marco Gonzalez would fill in the Mariners rotation, right? Like a lot of strikes, cutters, soft contact, not a lot of strikeouts, good command, not great. Still did end up walking 3 guys yesterday. But overall, I mean, that's the kind of stuff profile he sort of has right now. When they drafted him, it was higher velocity, more strikeouts. But now it seems, for Emerson Hancock, more of a pitch-to-contact approach, and that's what we saw yesterday.
When Hancock went 6 overall in 2020, the belief was he had number 1 starter type upside. That's come back down to earth a little bit now in the last couple years, between some injuries, between decreased velocity, a couple of different things. But if he's Marco Gonzalez for right now, that's perfect. Because what people like to forget about with Marco is that guy would go out and throw quality start after quality start after quality start and keep the team in games. He would get blown up from time to time. That's what happened to Emerson when he was in the minors. Every now and then he'd have a blow up start. But for the most part, he was keeping teams in games. Now, long term, maybe Hancock gets his velocity back and his upside goes back up. But for right now, in 2023, if he goes out and does anything similar to what he did in his debut, 5 innings of 1-run ball, if he goes 5 innings of 2-run ball, you're keeping him in games, and you can't ask for much more than that.
What was particularly impressive that look at the stars he was facing last night. His first professional strikeout came against Fernando Tatis Jr., and he got on Pitching Ninja with that too, which, you know, that's a hat tip moment right there for Emerson. But another thing is the Padres, they hit finesse pitchers pretty well. You know, the finesse label under Baseball Reference. It's guys who are in the bottom third of the league in combined walks and strikeouts, and more just pitch to contact instead of going after strikeouts. And I think that's where Emerson qualifies right now. The Padres, as a team, had an 800 OPS this season against finesse pitchers. And Emerson, the finesse pitcher, held them to 2 hits across 5 innings. And only 3 of the 14 balls that he allowed in play were over 95 miles an hour. That's pretty impressive stuff against that name, the name after name after name in that lineup, despite the fact they've been disappointing this season, to keep them at bay.
I will give Emerson some credit too. He did mix in some swing and miss in a start last night. He got 11 whiffs, 8 were on that sinker. I'm not saying 11 is some gaudy number, but it wasn't like he generated no strikeouts. He still punched out 3, and we're getting some guys to swing and miss. So it was a nice balance of both. For a guy that made his first start yesterday, again, how much more can you take away? I think people question, is he going to go out there and get blown up against the Padres lineup that is lethal, and also, like, to your point, hits slower throwing pitchers much better? He didn't do that. He was totally composed, and he kept the Mariners in the game. Then the team scored late.
I'm going to need to see some more of his mix of his 2-seamer and his 4-seam fastball, because, to be honest, shape-wise, he got from the scouting reports I was reading, he's got a lot more arm side run on his 4-seam fastball now, which really leads it to look a lot more like his 2-seam fastball. And when I was going through his start last night and watching it back a little bit, it's a little bit harder to really pick apart which pitch is a 2-seamer and which pitch is a 4-seamer, because if you look at Baseball Savant had him throwing 59% sinkers and only throwing 1 4-seam fastball all game, which by some people who counted otherwise said that was definitely not correct on that aspect. So I'm curious to see what his ideal balance of that is. And there was some more optimism as well that his 4-seamer actually does generate some more whiffs and be a primary whiff pitch of his. So I think that's kind of interesting. But overall, I did like the mix in terms of a ground ball pitcher getting some soft contact and letting his defense do the work. So I got to say, good job for Emerson Hancock. Also threw his cutter quite a bit, which is a bit of a softer pitch. Also, again, not for swing and miss purposes, but for soft contact purposes. And right now, that is really the I don't even know the right terminology. The attribute of Emerson Hancock is right now. A few changeups as well, but I guess that's kind of it.
He's pitching for his job right now in the big leagues. Jerry Dipoto said this week, when Bryan Woo gets back and healthy, and if everybody is still pitching well, they plan to go to a 6-man rotation. They had talked about that a little bit in the past to try to manage some innings between Bryan Woo, between Bryce Miller, help Emerson out too. Again, he is throwing a lot of innings this year already if you combine his numbers from the minors. So if he continues to pitch like this, he's going to stay in the rotation and they're going to go to 6 guys for the time being. But the key there is Dipoto said if everyone is pitching well. So if Emerson proves he's a big league pitcher, he'll stick around. And I hope he does.
Initial readings on Stuff Plus from Emerson's start, it was an overall 87. His sinker clocked in at an 82. His cutter at a 107. His changeup at an 80. His slider is at a 91. His fastball, a four-seam fastball at a 92. That sounds about right.
100th league average. So for everybody that just heard those numbers, that is below league average. So his stuff has not been overpowering. Again, he is not possessing the same stuff right now that they believed he once had when he was drafted in 2020. It's come down a little bit. Maybe it comes back up one day, but right now he is more like that Marco Gonzalez type, except he's right-handed and a little bit bigger and a little bit more athletic, by the way.
Yeah.
Did you see that play he made going to first base? I mean, this dude's an athlete.
I look at that and I say that's only a play a rookie would make. Because do you think Robbie Ray's diving for that ball?
No, he's
right.
not.
No, and that's no offense to Robbie, but pitchers know it's a long season and they can just let their second baseman get that ball instead of them. It's not their responsibility. But Emerson saved a base hit on that, so props to him.
He did, and he showed his athleticism. I mean, if you go back and listen to that interview we did with Brad Adam, Brad was saying, Emerson Hancock's a really good golfer. So doesn't surprise me he made a play like that. I think just in general, he's a good athlete and also can pitch really well, which is pretty exciting. Now, I do want to touch on Bryan Woo here a little bit, which is the reason Emerson Hancock was called up, because they put Bryan Woo on the 15-day IL. They called it forearm inflammation. There we go. So he's going to miss his next 2 starts. So this is a phantom injury, right?
It is. Jerry did spin it on Seattle Sports today that it wasn't a phantom injury. I have a really hard time thinking that it's not a phantom injury. He might be a little bit sore. That part could be correct. Sore enough that he actually can't pitch. Yeah, I think he's getting a bit of a rest. This is by far the most he's pitched in a major league season. And then when he comes back, he's going to get more rest between starts, which will not only help him, but as we touched on in Wednesday's episode, will help Bryce Miller as well get this group into September and in position for a playoff spot against a soft schedule. So, yeah, I think it's fake, and I think he's going to enjoy his time off. Maybe he'll go hit the links a little bit.
Here's why I was not sold that it was a real injury. First off, you didn't see him get injured anywhere during that last start in Anaheim. The last image we saw of Bryan Woo was him screaming and waving his hands all around in that video after the Cade Marlowe Grand Slam. You know, where he screamed, "Let's go, Shohei, we have Cade Marlowe!" And he's waving his hands all around and he's all fired up. I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, okay, where did he get hurt there? I don't think he's injured. Now, it could have happened after in a throwing session or something, but then when they
said it was in the bullpen.
So when they talked about it in the press conference about it in the media session afterward, they said, well, he probably could have made, or no, they didn't say he probably could have made his next start. They said Bryan still wanted to make his next start and felt like he could have, but we said no. And they also said it's nothing too serious. It should be the minimum time. Maybe there's a little something there, but to me, the fact they were saying, he thinks he could have made his next start has me saying, well, this might be their way of shutting him down, managing his innings without actually having to send him down to the minors and derail his confidence, while also figuring out a solution for the time being.
It's not even derailing his confidence. It's just not wasting an option. I think that's all it is. It's finding an excuse to give him a week plus off and then come back and then get some more rest built into the rotation as well. But now I think of this in the other way. Now you're going to have George Kirby and Logan Gilbert and Luis Castillo pitching less often. So that's the balance you're going to have to play here with August. You can do that with a softer schedule, but that it does lead to be, you do need to lead to be more careful with that, I would say. That wasn't great English, but I'm never good with the English language anyways, so we'll take that as it is. I do think that's interesting, though. Can we put some context, though, here, Lyle? Now that Emerson has made his debut, and for the most part looked like a big leaguer in his first start with 5 innings of 1-run ball. Over the span of 4 drafts, the Mariners drafted, developed, and now have debuted an entire major league starting rotation at once. Isn't that incredible?
Logan Gilbert, 2018. George Kirby, 2019. Emerson Hancock, 2020. Those 3 were all first rounders. Then you get Bryce Miller in the 4th round of 2021. You get Brian Wu in the 6th round of 2021. And here they all are in the big leagues, thriving. Oh, by the way, you also traded for and extended Luis Castillo. You also signed Robbie Ray. This is a ridiculous rotation. I don't think anybody's set up for the future in terms of their starting pitching as well as the Mariners are.
I will give a little props over to the Cleveland Guardians, actually. They're like, they might not be at the same quantity as the Mariners, but I was trying to just find any comparisons. Are there any comparisons in Major League Baseball to compare this rotation to? And the Guardians, I mean, here's the list. I mean, with Shane Bieber, he is hurt. Logan Allen is having a great rookie season. So is Tanner Bibby, and so is Gavin Williams. So they have developed, a pretty good starting rotation, and they had Savali, who they just traded away as well. So, like, I would say that's comparison, and then the Dodgers as well. What's up?
And then Tristan McKenzie.
Yeah, I forgot about him too. So, they're doing pretty well. And then the Dodgers, if you think about it, I mean, back in the day, they did indeed develop Clayton Kershaw along with their current set of starters, like Bobby Miller, Michael Grove, Julio Urias, Tony Gonsolin, Walker Buehler, and Dustin May. So there are teams that do it, but it is very few and far between. So we've essentially now named 3 of 30 teams in Major League Baseball that actually have the capacity to pull this off. And it's pretty cool to say the Mariners are one of those 3 teams.